Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Hemet San Jacinto Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm Koka Lakshman. Everyone calls me Koka. One of the board members of the Chamber of Commerce. I want to start off by thanking our board and also Ms. Cindy Lemke for putting a lot of time and efforts in putting this together. What we have done is actually have 6 questions for each candidate. That way all of you have the same opportunity to address those questions and give you an opportunity to get to know, or it's actually giving the residents and the citizens of this valley to get to know the candidates that are running for the council. Some of you are like you are already on the council, so they know you probably, but it's fair for everyone else. And the new term coming up, new goals may be there, so we'd love to hear it. So what we will do is initially we will have you introduce yourself and talk about what you're doing, what you're doing. And then we'll jump onto the questions.
Very good.
So without any further ado, here is Micheal Perciful.
So like Koka said, my name is Micheal Perciful. I am running for City Council for City of Hemet 3rd District, which encompasses the central west side, so between Stetson and Menlo. Costin is kind of the western cutoff to Florida Avenue, and then it goes all the way to the city limits. And then on the east side of the district, it's Menlo to Lyon all the way to Whittier, and then Whittier goes east to encompass all of Sierra Dawn South. So if you live in that area, you're in the 3rd District in Hemet. As many of you know, we went to districts in 2016 as a result of a lawsuit. So instead of the city spending all the money to fight the lawsuit, they just decided to go district. So my first election was in a district. So with that, again, my name is Micheal Perciful, and I've been a resident of Hemet for over 20 years now. I've got 2 sons, both grown, that were raised here in Hemet, and graduated West Valley High School. I now have 2 granddaughters that I'm hoping to keep here in Hemet, but my son's kind of wanting to venture out and see the States and see somewhere where he can have 4 seasons. So I told him, well, Idlewild is perfect. Keep him close, but I'm trying. So with that, my key and focus for the last 4 years and for my next 4 years is still economic development and quality of life and public safety. So the reason why I'm focusing on those 3 key areas is because you can't really have one without the other. So it's kind of like a 3-legged stool, right? If you lose one, then the other 2 seem to fall apart. So that's been my focus over the last 3 or 4 years, and that will continue to be my focus over the next 4 years if I'm reelected.
Thank you, Micheal.
Yep.
Here's question number 1. I think you kind of touched on some of it probably. But anyways, it's what do you believe to be the top 3 most pressing concerns to the business community in our valley?
So public safety is one, because you know, we want our businesses to be able to thrive, and if we've got people walking over transients and homeless and drug problems, if we've got it's bad for business. And so my focus, again, public safety, to get the cops out there to kind of keep it handled, get the transients on their way, and focus on that. And then quality of life with that. You know, we want to make sure, and I want to make sure, I mean, I'm a business owner here in Hemet, and I want to make sure that when I come to my office in the morning that I'm not having to walk over people, and I don't have graffiti on my building, and there's not trash all over. I want to make sure, you know, it's good for business that way. And then at the same token, when I leave at the end of the day, I want to know that I'm not going to come up to the next day with broken windows or graffiti on my building. So I mean, public safety is one of the key to get that and keep business thriving here in Hemet.
The other 2?
Say again?
I believe you said one of them, right?
Well, yeah, and that quality of life is primary, because you know, with the quality of life issues is, you know, the homelessness that we're dealing with, crime. You know, it's difficult from a city level. It's difficult, and it's been difficult over the last 4 years with legislation that passed passes in Sacramento, it has a consequence locally. And so at the local level, we take the brunt of that, and we have to deal with what the state dictates. And so when they pass bills that are kicking people out of prison, where do those people go? They come to our cities. They come to Hemet because Hemet's affordable. They come to all the cities. And I've talked to city leaders up and down the state of California that have similar demographics to Hemet and similar size and fiscal budget, yearly budgets, and they deal with the same problems that we're dealing with. We're seeing the increase in homelessness, the uptick in crime, and so we're having to deal with that at a local level because the state legislature, they want to pass laws that takes the burden off the state and shifts it to the cities, and so we're seeing that.
Thank you. Do you believe the city's budget process should budget expenses to meet revenue goals, or are just revenues to meet budget and spending priorities? And also your comments about Measure U, or the funds being used for what it is and what it should be used for.
Absolutely. So my philosophy is that the city should base their budget based on revenue and be conservative on their revenue projections, and based on past revenue amounts, and looking in the future at what's going on with the economy and how the economy is working and how that affects Hemet and how that will affect the budget. So that's kind of how it should be done. I know there's a lot of the department heads are the ones that ultimately put the budget together, and then they present the budget to the city manager, and then the city manager presents it to council for approval or not. So the budget process is kind of how the electeds in Hemet can really push an agenda forward for the city and push that vision for the city and how the city's gonna move forward. And so how is it that it's ultimately the cities are mandated to have a balanced budget, whether your revenues exceed income or expenses, or your expenses exceed revenues. At the end of the day, it's a balanced budget. How they balance it is the question. And in the past, it's been balanced with reserves and drawing down reserve amounts. And so my push has always been, I want to see a revenue expense neutral budget where your expenses meet your revenues. And so out of the last 4 years that I've been council, I've only voted in favor of one budget, and that was last year's budget, where it was actually a balanced budget. Revenues and expenses balanced out. The years previous, to get a balanced budget, they drew down reserves to meet that revenue expense balance. This past budget it shifted money around, and it used some Measure U funds to pay for public safety. It did pay for public safety on the general fund side. However, to get that balanced budget in this budget, they had to reduce staffing levels, and we didn't. As far as public safety goes, the staffing levels weren't reduced by terminating employees. They were reduced by taking budgeted, funded, unfilled positions and defunding them, basically. So the police department had like 12 positions defunded that weren't filled, and then the fire department had to move some. They did some early retirements and moved a couple positions around. As a lot of people know, they took the fire engine away from Station 5, and so that reduced staffing levels at Station 5. So it just has a medic unit now, so it's just a paramedic unit at Station 5. So that's how they were able to reduce some of the Measure U issues. Now, to your question about Measure U, how do I think that should be spent? I think it should be spent on public safety. That was what the intent was, and that's the intent of the resolution that I signed on to when I first swore in 2016, December of 2016. So how does that look? Police and fire, when Chief Dave Brown was the police chief at the time. He had a plan for Measure U funding and how that was gonna look with the police department, and he came up with that plan based on a 2/3 of the revenue going to police and a third going to the fire department. So with that, their projections were $10 million a year in Measure U, additional revenue from Measure U. And so the chief at the time made that plan based on $667 million, or $6,667,000 as part of the budget that was his plan, right? So when the first year Measure U money numbers came in, it came out to about 11.2 million. So that was extra Measure U revenue that could be utilized for public safety. Now, as far as the public safety plan for Measure U, I agree. I think it's hits the mark. The problem is that we're seeing increases in costs. We had to, in the beginning, we needed to hire more cops and firefighters, and we needed to retain them. So the challenge that Hemet has, and that Hemet had at the time, is to hire new police officers, because when Measure U was passed in 2016, the city of Riverside had a 1% increase, Temecula had a 1% increase, we had a 1% increase, and so did Menifee. So all of those 4 cities had that 1% increase, and all 4 cities said they were gonna utilize their money for public safety and hire more police. So the challenge that Hemet has is Hemet's a busy city as far as law enforcement goes. Our police officers are working, they're working hard. And so other cities, Temecula, Marietta, Menifee, those cities, their cops don't have to work as hard, because the demographics are different. Income levels are higher, and so they don't see the same type of crime that we see here in Hemet. And so when you've got all these cities around us that are hiring police officers, the pool for police officers, for qualified police officers, is very small. And so the challenge is getting officers to come work for us versus going to work for some of these other cities where it's not as much work. And so that's been the challenge. So back to now, where do I see Measure U going? I still want to see Measure U going for public safety across the board. Police, getting more cops hired, getting Station 5 back manned with a fire engine, and but that police and fire is not the only. That's not just public safety. Public safety is if you are at the parks need to be clean, right? So that's, it's gotta be safe environment for you and your children to be able to play at the park. That's part of public safety. Also, when you're walking down the street, we want you to be able to get to your destination when you're walking down the street and not trip and fall. That's public safety, because we're seeing, these trip and fall lawsuits that the cities get hit with. I wanna be able to reduce that so that we don't have to defend lawsuits, because all that does is put money into the city attorney's pocket. I would rather not defend lawsuits and have that money go towards actual programs that the city can offer.
Thank you. Question number 3. As we know, combating crime requires the effective cooperation between the police and the local residents. As a candidate, what do you believe is the responsibility of the local residents to combat drugs and violence in their neighborhood? And what solution do you propose?
Yeah, so the residents have an obligation, right? You want to you got to do your part, right? So when you see this going on, don't put yourself in harm's way, but still be able to address the issue. If you've got people that are doing drugs outside your business or near your residence, tell them you need to get out of here, right? But don't put yourself in harm's way. Absolutely not. The best, if a resident or a business owner sees a crime in progress, by all means call 911. That's the police. They're trained to handle these kind of things. But residents shouldn't tolerate this kind of behavior. Drugs are very detrimental to family and to individual lives and to the community as a whole, because I hear people talk all the time about, well, let somebody do drugs in the privacy of their own home. Fine, but the problem is that when people do drugs, it doesn't affect just them. It affects everybody around them. So these people that are addicted to drugs, they then have to feed that addiction. So what are they? They're out doing petty crimes, committing thefts, burglaries, and that kind of thing. So it's important for when the residents and the business owners and business community sees something happening, they need to report it. If when none of us are immune. Even on council, I'm not immune to crime. I've been the victim of crime, and when I saw the people that were instrumental in the crime that they committed against me and my family, I dealt with it head on. But I also was on the phone with 911 at the same time so that I could get those resources to get to these people. So again, address it head on, but don't put yourselves in harm's way, and call 911. If it's a non-emergency, call the non-emergency police line and let the police who are trained to deal with those situations handle it.
Thank you. Question number 4. During these times of COVID-19 pandemic, what role should elected officials play?
That's a great question. So I have, in the very beginning of COVID, when everything started, we on council voted unanimously to have a local state of emergency. And what that did is that it gave the ability of the city manager, who is the emergency services coordinator for the city, the ability to make decisions on behalf of city services and city facilities, to be able to make decisions on that, and then come to council for a ratification of that. And so in the beginning, it was very important because doctors didn't know, there was very little known about COVID, the transfer, how deadly it was, and that. So in the very beginning, we needed to have that tighter controls on city resources to be able to protect our city employees and our city property and city facilities. So now moving forward, we're 7 months into this now. Doctors know vast more than they did when it first started. So even a few months ago, I had proposed and actually motioned at the council meeting to rescind the state of emergency because we had more facts up at that point. We had more facts on how doctors are treating it, how not to put infected people into nursing homes because seniors are at higher risk. So we know now that the older you are, the higher the risk. When you have autoimmune diseases, higher risk. When you've got other underlying conditions, put you at higher risk. So we know that now. And so the plan moving forward is we shouldn't really, and from my perspective, we shouldn't be quarantining the healthy. The healthy need to still be out there doing their thing because it helps the economy. And we need to keep a watchful eye on those who are more at risk. So personally, I think that that we should be responsible, and people need to go out and make their own decisions on their own health with consultation with their doctors. Because I don't think it's a politician's job to interfere with somebody's health and get in the way of that patient-doctor relationship. And I think that I see a lot of that going on now. I think that this COVID has more recently become more of a political game than an actual health, let's treat the sick, let's get the economy opened up. So that's kind of my position on it. I think we're at a place now, the doctors know how to treat better and how to keep less people from dying of this disease, this virus.
Thank you. Question number 5. If elected, how will you avoid the challenge or the influence of special interest groups and still do what is best for our city and accomplish your goals?
Great question. So in the 4 years that I've been on council, every decision I make is how is that going to impact our local residents and our local businesses? Is it going to benefit or is it going to harm? And so everything that I've done to date and everything that I will do if I'm reelected will be on the same. Is it going to benefit Hemet? Is it going to benefit the community? Is it going to benefit the business community? And so that's been my position, because like I said, I'm a business owner in Hemet, and I wanna make sure my business thrives just like I want my neighbor's business to thrive. So I'm gonna continue down that same path.
Okay, thank you. Here's our last question. Tell us something about yourself that you may have not already spoken, or things that you may have said that you want to put emphasis on. So here's an opportunity to address our members, our residents, in our entire valley.
Yeah, so, so a couple things I wanna touch on, some of the things that I've accomplished over the last 4 years, while on council. The Stetson Bridge has been an issue for many, many years, probably 10+ years. It's gone through some retrofits, some repairs over the years, and I have, when we've gotten reports, when I first got elected, we got an initial report from the city engineer about its condition. And from that point on, I had been pushing the city manager to make getting the Stetson Bridge replaced a priority. And so I'm proud that that has been accomplished. We finally got through, the city got through all the hoops with Caltrans and EPA to get that bridge done. That was a priority when as soon as I found out the actual condition of that bridge, because that was a public safety. My fear was that bridge was gonna collapse when a big truck went over it and people were gonna die. That was my fear. I didn't want that to happen. So I made that a priority, and we got it done. One of the other priorities that I got done has been the Seattle Basin, which happens to be in my district. The Stetson Bridge kind of borders my district. The Seattle Basin is in my district, and every year we get a substantial amount of rain, that basin floods, and it threatens flooding to all of the homes in that area. And so the year I was mayor in 2018, I went before the Riverside County Stormwater Board and was able to get $500,000 from the county to be put into, for a temporary solution on the Seattle Basin for water, for that water, and to help prevent flooding. So it was always an issue. They would, when it would rain and rainy season comes, the city would put out pumps, and the pumps would just run the hoses right across Costin Avenue, having to close Costin Avenue to traffic, so it would have to divert traffic around the neighborhood. And so there's 2 schools down on Costin, actually 3, but the elementary school and the middle school, and then the high school a little farther down, but it disrupted traffic to the schools, in the morning and the afternoon when that was closed off. So we got some temporary fixes to be able to get the water moving, and keep it from flooding, and to keep the road open. So those are 2 of the biggest accomplishments during my term. So those are a couple of the things. As far as something personal about me, I think I'm pretty much an open book. I put out there what I've done over my lifetime, and I'm pretty proud of all the things that I've done, especially working for this community. I love this town. Like I said, I've been here for 20 years. I've raised my kids here. I'd like to see my grandkids raised here, because it's a beautiful town. When you look around, especially in the wintertime, I like the winter the best. It's my time of the year is the winter time, and so when the mountains around us are all snow-capped, it's just gorgeous. And the people that are here, we've made lifelong friends since we've moved to Hemet, and I want to continue that. So it's a great community.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
This is your Hemet San Jacinto Valley Chamber of Commerce. These sessions are being brought to you by the Chamber board members, and thanks a lot to our Executive Director, Cindy Lemke, and we appreciate you being here. Good luck to you,
Absolutely,
and
my
have
pleasure.
a great day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.